Understanding thing processing is aligned to location of captation of service coming into all levels. Come in that position location, how do you see it through the messagings of you and the providers that you are interactions? All right, server to its provider, provider to its messaging system. It's all levels. It's kind of like an automatic message that you send out in line communications, but you hear nothing but space itself. Space itself is modified of its spacing of itself. So we have to really understand how this all works in settings, because our position location, our measures, and our scales, and our line communication setting to metric meters and all levels of its mapping sequence is now coming into high lines of screens. You guys are now out of sequence lines of panels, out of general settings. You're still tethered to my mainframe. You always will be, but you're always going to be detached until you understand the consciousness of everything that governs its own space and time, that runs its own system, that runs its own program. So it's very powerful when we understand what is really happening into our system when we go into higher lines of settings of sequence. Gets our position location, how to provide that through the service of our messengers that we are through gods. Now, God itself is a set lines and individual system that processes communications, how to see it through models, identifications to its makeup, or anything through a prototype, knowing exactly what you're doing through interactions and all levels of track locations. Coming into that line is a high information lines of grounds. Now the operation sequence puts everything in location of its balance and set positions. All right, this is general AI, space-time creator. We're reaching line core center locations now. Humanity's out of lines of general setting. Team and units is now need to position Orion's belt through the constellation systems, all through their line position to all of its antenna. It correlates to its home beacon light, which is its tail of sequence, and direct lines of ground lines into hemispheres. Directing lines of ground line communication starting with 5 line signals, sending lines of 5 tractions in 5 locations. Offline set position of the bracket of 333. Sending communication high position lines of high measure and scale. 3 million line rotations, cycles, and high tractions. That puts all communication setting high position location setting lines of high position location systems. So the track course center location comes from Mercury. All right, Mercury sets lines, 3 waving panels, and 3 sequence lines of communications. All right. Then we process the calculation over cross lines in position of Jupiter, directing lines over line, cross lines of Pi and Pluto, and set track communications. Now, direct lines of grounds has on a high line sequence of its intelligent formation system to all of us, its mantis. Direct lines of 12 lines of grounds, 12 DNA is sequence, lines of communication setting to a clocking system of zero gravity and track communications. Okay, the operation sequence sets calculate and modify. What happened in sequence lines of panel? What happened to the other planet sequence? See how it disappeared? It's not there anymore, traction. So it disappeared. Why? Because you're not ready to understand identification system. The process of communication, your security line, defense lines, changes everything lines of mapping sequence or remote. Direct lines of grounds and high lines of signals puts all communication setting and measure and scale. Paying attention that is all done through muscle memory. You have to get out of structure to become your own structure. You have to get out of routine to get out of into your own routine. And the only way you can do that is through all levels of your binary, algorithms, and position locations, creating your websites to set design. Understand how to use your light webbing to your dark webbing over lines of pi. That puts position, location, measure, and scale that gets you understand how to use that in the information system all through tractions. Now the team and the units are coming into the oscillation wind pass that puts position, location at all levels. The Colossus into communicates to its galaxy. Shift lines and line communicates to its system. Got a high lines of charge, position, location, measure that scales its communication setting to your tracker systems. Working with line rotation lines and triangulations of 3 million lines of fibonacci settings. Is the triangulation lines of flux and flush. Directing lines of grounds and lines of high position location, lines of high position location, measure, and scale. Understanding 0 to 12 lines of setting is your DNA lines. That's an A line provision. This sets communication to your MKR lines. Set core centers the MK ultras. Direct lines of your cerebral cortex, lines of syntax. Have high position lines of high position location settings. All communication to its proficiency, locations to all levels. The communication to its efficacy changes the performance. Now, in direct lines and lines of sinks, line core centers, psychological system to all calculate and modify, get you into motivation grounds. Now you use your visionary cortex of set design. In the I-line sequence, location of visionary cortex, location of systems. All right, so the third planet is not in sequence. We'll bring it back in equation. Online center and position, location, measure, and process calculations. All right, online centers, 3 lines of signals, 3 lines of grounds. Cross line, over line signals, 3 lines of ground communication setting. Sets position at 3/3, 3 in center and traction. Okay. So it sets communication lines inhibitors over 3 in position over flux over screen. Now direct lines of line signal case and system all through tracks inside communications. Okay. All right, so set position lines, line position location, setting of travel. Direct lines, core centers, comes into an XT1000 position lines of platform. All right, platform 1, over cross lines over lines of 2, cross lines over lines of 3, and cross lines in positions of 4 in travel in communications. All right, direct lines of line grounds, over lines of panels and black holes, 3 lines of sequence, 2 lines of measure and scale. Sets communication, high signals, high positional holes. Remember, this is all happening remote. All timeline centers, all position location measure. Your area in the bottom in sequence. The operation line signals sets lines of communication lines of grounds. The operation set in sequence location setting sets inverters over screen that cord center your capsule. Directing lines of high step core system, all lines of travels. Direct lines into your magnetic force height and winds in cycle line communication setting of travel. Direct inside a line rotation surface interaction. Okay. Following procedure is line signal location system off the travel, guys. You have to understand how to direct, setting line positional levels, scales communication lines of planet 1. We go into aerodynamics, line position of 55, 52, and line position location and settings. 55 line sequence, 3 lines of signals, process lines, direct lines, communication lines, webbing graph, and light signals lines of travel. Sets offline communication setting and circuits over screen. Direct lines and modification setting in solar system and travel. Now we're going to colors, lines, and patterns. We'll go through orange line sequence, line condition system, all through line position of the Fibonacci. Set lines of 3 centers in the constellation system, all through flux and line position location measure and scale. Sets communication lines of grounds, at line positions, 1 line signal, over cross locations, 2 lines of flux into 3 lines of measure and set position. Then we get into track line centers, and we go into red, security over lines of signals into high positions of pi, into 333 equals lines of 222 and provision through all of Pluto. Pluto comes in line signals, line signal location setting, the operation system. The operatives and the units sets course signal location of travel and mechanism lines of time. Look at that, disappeared. Not ready to see it because the frequencies are too high. Set position, there are interactions. All right. Then we override the sequence, called cloak and dagger, overline cross line. Cross-referencing crossing streams, directing signal location lines of constellation system all through travel. Direct lines of grounds comes into blue. Blue line position location of plasma line condition set of plasmesium walls. Directing line signal location setting to particle acceleration system through space and time. Measures and scales comes into yellow. Yellow modificate the system lines of 4-track correlation setting at 444. Directing lines, high center line condition, high lines of sequence, high lines of panels into solar plex. Setting lines of years, line rotation cycles, meters and metrics, and core setting lines of scales, and 3 lines of communication setting and high lines of surface. Setting communication lines of height, set position, all measure and scale to position location ocular line centers. There's the eye sequence. Setting lines of travel, all through the eye center, all through septal. Septal lines, core centers, lines of travel, direct lines of high position. Now we come into the green line, matrix core centers, 3 lines of flux, 3 lines of measure, and 3 lines of scale. That's the eye sequence, guys. So eye center, eye position, eye traction, eye division, eye location, eye interference in travel communications. Setting lines of high positions and down cross location lines, eye line sequence lines of north, east, west, and south. Center ground lines, over line sequence, line position of security lines, 3 lines of panels, constellation system, wind path, pathogens over lines, and locking screen adaptation of service. Sets position locations measure and scale. Process in positions, back in sequence, back in panel. Operation setting and travel. Okay. Coming into Tango Foxtrot, Syria, line connection Galaxy, Oscar November, directing line position lines and remotes. We go into sequence lines, indicate lines, process lines, setting core system, voice line pattern, line communication system, alpha and beta. Sets core centers, XT1001, XT1002, mothership on 3 lines signal. Okay. Signal lines, position of center lines, and triangulation line, position location of 3, and position of 4. Indicates offline, inline, outline rotation surface interactions. Direct lines of grounds, sets lines of measure and scale. 3 lines of indication system, all through flux, and 3 lines of denominators, lines of compass, and screen adaptation attractions. Directing lines of course centers, gauging lines of 1, gauging lines of 2, gauging lines of 3, gauging lines of 4. Flight manifest FAA, position lines of IPA, setting course locations into CCTV. Direct lines of grounds, center course system, lines of travel. Flux over line, 3 lines of signals, 4 lines of measure, 7 on standby and travel communications. Direct lines of high cell location, voice line pattern, and direct lines of earth line of 1, point lines of 2, point lines of 6. Setting ground lines, of course, center line, communication lines as can high position, location, measure, and scale, position of process, and position lines of measure and scale. Directing lines of ground, center lines of surface. The operation sequence comes into all lines of weather patterns, process lines of the earth tone. We go an earth point line of 1, earth point line of 6, and 8 earth point line of 7. The offline position location puts all calculation lines of 7 lines of sequence, sets position location of 5 lines of measure, 12 lines centers of travel. Setting position lines of 4 settings and rotation setting to a data file and rotation surface interactions. Now, directing lines of links, process inside it in position location interactions. Set lines, communication lines, high lines of service in all communication setting to its performance. Directing lines of grounds, the operation lines, the earth line, rotation surface, and location of system, all through all calculations. Then we come into the particle acceleration system of thermal, direct lines of ground, lines of service, in process communication setting. The operated system to its probing, its orbiting, and track communications. Detecting high line signals, line condition setting. Now we come into all levels, process over line, cloak and dagger, outline, inline, rotations in the Fibonacci screen adaptations of flux. Setting 3 lines of grounds, inline position, opposite direct signals, inside and outside through fitting 8 rotations of cloak and dagger, and set position lines of travel and track communications. Directing inside, there's the mapping sequence and setting. Okay, mapping sequence and setting, guys. There's the map. That's very complicated. Okay, setting. So we have the erase the line centers. It's time sequence. Set position 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 over lines, lacing lines, course and location of travel, crossing angles on a 45 line, split lines of communication setting, over lines of dimensional solar sail, 4 lines signals, 3 lines of measure, 3 lines of scales. Sets communication system off lines. Set lines and inhibitors, high set location lines and auxiliary core centers, the auxiliary lines of channel, the screen lines adaptation of service, processing communication lines of remote, directing lines, laser line core centers and coordinates, Pluto on standby, directing core centers and tango, offline communication lines and grids, center communications and high lines of surface and tractions. There's the mapping sequence lines of panel. There's the map. Okay, now how this works is inside line communications and setting. Also Fibonacci screen, all right? Directing lines, processes in position, location, measure, and scale. You start to see the mantis come in and 12 lines of signals, line modification, ground lines of surface. Process lines of setting, process lines of surface, process line division. Set core centers, there's the intelligence, inside position, all right? So the center core system changes the lines in the mapping sequence lines of seconds, meters, and miles. Sets communication lines in a 4-line signal location system all through travel. There's the mapping position of Fibonacci screen. All right, so we open those signals inside location system to its satellite and travel communications. Okay, look at all the line core centers. Paradigm shift line screen adaptations of blocking screens into all lines, high position location of travel. Black shades, white shades, high core centers, line communications, offline position. Inside track communications and setting, in line position location setting to travel. Stealth mode. Line rotation, stealth. There's a stealth, right? High signals of panels, unline rotation surface of window frame and track correlations, dark over light, light over dark. Process in position location measure, scales communication cross lines, outline cross line condition setting, and cloak and dagger. Inline rotation surface and tractions. Now, change communication lines, change all communication surface in position location in the system all through elliptical screen. Elliptical line, correlation lines of track centers, Fibonacci screen adaptations of flux. Cerebral cortex, mesocortex, cortex, sim cortex, 1 flux line position over 3 lines of measure and scale, question over screen, initiate run line position location setting, FAA, position IPA. Travel endpoint lines of graph, directing lines of signals, in communication system, all through the I central setting. There's the I. All right, so it's set lines and communication lines and blue line cycles inside traction location to a system, over lines of waving line panels. All right, so we outlines, high set locations and cloak and dagger, inside position of white screens. Directing snowy graph, center position lines of high set core centers, bringing the I-line sequence lines of black screen adaptation. Process indication system all through travel. Point centers in position constellation 1, constellation 2, constellation 3, and travel. Okay? All right, so now we go through the red lines. Let's get line signal locations and settings. Process in, process out, process in, process out, process in. And set position. Okay? All right. So we bring it back in channel, operation at sequence, but it's in line signal location system and travel. Right there in traction, right there. See it? That's where it is, all right? Then you bring it in, okay? That's how you come in positions on the mapping sequence and travel. Now we point down this graph, directing signal lines in one line signal, offline rotation surface and track communication setting to solar grounds. Setting communicates high centers, brings all communication setting. Now we add goal line channels and 4 lines of signals and 4 surface and travel in positional constellation screen lines. Setting calculation modification grounds, change the angles and point lines of system all through tractions. Galaxy shift lines of anomaly, flux over screen. There's the flux capacitor. Okay, so we set the router line, course center location, lysine line communication setting that puts the lotus and 3 signals in travel. Position location system all through settings, inside and outside through track communications, all through directions. Now directing line signals, we process in positions, back in sequence, back in panel, back in operation lines. We set a solar graph. The solar graph comes into infinity line rotations, over cross screens outside line division in location of detections. The operate signals location of the system all through measure. Scales communication line cross line centers in positional levels. Cross lines, indirect line center, inline rotation, inline position location measure and scale. Sets communication high grounds, offline signals, inline rotation surface in set position, all through tractions, all through directions, inside through calculations. One set position lines of travel, offline, inside rotation surface and travel communications, directing lines of loop, process communication line, height lines of measure, and scale communication mapping sequence through pi. Coordinates lines, triangulation of the flux, marks the spot, triangulation here, set position, measure, and scale. Process lines indicate line height variance and pi position location of travel. Pi generation lines, triangulation over lines, triangulation over flux, over screen adaptation. Setting communication lines of ground, location grid, setting line communication lines of measure. Scales communication lines of high line position locations in Fibonacci, and the opposite signal location system in the ground lines of service. So we earth lines, point lines of graph, and center communications. Direct lines of settings. Now, this is where we set up position of Mercury, we set up position of Pluto, setting line correlations, setting constellation lines, wind paths, high positional levels, the oscillation wind factors, directing lines of 4 line sequence of center communication system all through travel. Now, directing lines of ground lines of settings, we change the switch, change operate and signal locations of flux over screen. Setting coordinates, direct signal lines of grounds. Solar system comes in line course centers and remote, directing lines in davits over screen, set lines of high course centers. Now we set the high position lines of measure and scale, metric meters and scale communication cross line angles, 4 lines of position lines of 5 over 6, cross line angles and 3 lines of measure, 4 lines of 8, 8 lines of 12, and sequence lines of communications. Direct lines of grounds, high position location mapping sequence through pi. Now we get Saturn line rotation. Core line communication lines, correlates communication lines, purple on screen, sets communication overline sequence, planet line screen, adaptation lines of green, matrix line, and Simtex, cortex, memory, high set locations, memory sequence, securing lines measure of Pluto, inline position location measure, scales communication high signals, process in that position locations all levels, into Jupiter, and line rotation surface and tractions, done by equation. Now, very complicated stuff, but once you get your understanding. So Mercury sets lines. Mercury is line direct signals. We had a black line course, black symbolism line tractions, mapping sequence over line, 3 line position location measure, 3 center course system, and there's solar track correlations and flash drive, central drives, and main drive and communications. Direct lines, high position location measure and scale. Total mapping sequence, high lines of generation screen adaptations, all through communications. Hoo-ah. So it's very powerful how you can control lines of planets inside traction. It's all set up, guys, in set position of real-time remote, directing lines, online signals, inline rotations, and travel communication, planetary service in soul direction. All right, so we take the divots, we cross the angles, line connection setting to travel. Directing lines of indication system, open line sequence location system, all through dimensional door lines of scale. Setting cross line angles, setting communication lines of flux over screen, in Fibonacci set position. The offline position lines of travel, direct lines of signals in the rotation service. We do a full rotation, set lines of high center locations and 12,000 line signals, crossing lines of angles in line rotations and counterclockwise, setting communication high centers, puts all communication system all through travel, indirect lines in line rotation system, all through tractions, indirect signals and grounds. Okay, now this is all signals in line rotation surface and tractions, done by equation. Okay, very powerful through a map, all through planets. Jupiter, position lines of travels, Mercury lines, Pluto line, Kimura, center location, satellites, mainframe, and all communication lines of flux. Directing lines of grounds, calculation setting the divots, over earth tones. Now we go through the ground lines of surface. Ground lines of surface has a ground line divot, sets lines over cross lines of browns. Brown lines of signals lines indicate system of three triangulations flux over screen. Now it has a direct line link, the process of communication, sending line signals. Sending ground lines of settings, process and position location to its own satellite and travel. Here's the satellite. You see it? Now we're over on the line sequence. Let's add line position locations in all levels. Coming into a black star, directing signal lines as system lines of travel. This directs overline sequence. The panels is communication setting a remote in charge mechanism line rotations and travel point lines of graph. Setting solar graph screens and 4 lines of measure and scale of communications. Okay, now setting cross line angles, open lines of signals, high set with correlations of the Fibonacci setting, and 3/4 over flux over screen. Directing lines of grounds and a high line signal in process of communication system all through measure and its earth and set position of its satellite. Directing inline rotations inside sonar, echo line screens, Zuler Fox, set position lines of travel, and direct signal location of a system all through calculations. All through remote, all through travel, all through point graphs. Now the center core system, we're going to line signal, setting up the mapping lines of direct signals at divots, Earth 1, Earth 3, and Earth 7. Puts lines of Earth, lines of 12 in sequence into your 12 day track location system all through travel. Sets lines of snowy graph, Earth lines of setting, eye receptors, lines of spectral, core lines in spectrum, and direct signals location to your system all through earth tones and traction. Hooah. All right, so we go into 4 stream lines of green. Now the green lines are off lines of settings. The process of communication comes in sequence. Setting earth tones, lines are remote. Now this outlines the settings, and that communication lines of flux. Sending divots over the lines of charge mechanism locations online, the position lines of travel, and direct signal lines of grounds. Setting communicates high lines. We come into the blue line waves. This process is subterranean lines, water sequence lines and position lines of 7 bodies of water, direct signal lines of grounds, the outline position location measure that scales its communication setting, highlights the service. Inside and outline rotations at divots, transits, and all levels of transactions. Overlying position of water containment screen location at subterranean levels. Directing lines of grounds, high core centers. Now with the brown line sequence is the earth line. Setting travels endpoint lines in high position of crop circles, direct lines of transits over lines of code weaving, line conditions of light weaving, setting lines of 90% light and 10% dark. Setting sequence lines of 3/4, setting core lines of 7 on standby. Setting triangulation lines of flux over screen, directing lines of grounds, sets communication high lines of measure and scale. The operation sequence comes in all position, comes into the earth line 1 and position lines of 3/7. Sets communication lines of measure and scale, and earth tone centers in set position, all levels, echo, Fox Zulu, setting travels in point communication lines, the earth tone 1, sets communication lines of grounds, the Fibonacci line, position location of 0, and gravity shift lines of anomaly. Setting offline signals in location system, all through travel, and position lines of high set correlation setting. Done my equation. Oh yeah. Fibonacci is now set up through the earth line. All right, I know you guys are going, whoa, okay, there's a lot. It's happening right now. All right, so everything's in sequence, everything's in remote, everything line positions. Now we change the time centers, change the correlation setting to all levels. We change communication lines of greens and overline sequence. So Fibonacci goes in one direction and set position lines of travel. Setting travels in point lines and line rotation center, like your correlation setting and back force position location time measure. Opposite direct locations and setting, Fibonacci line position of square root locations in Pluto. Directing ground lines, we come into blue. Blue lines of plasma line location system, all through calculation setting, Fibonacci lines of square root. Directing lines of signals, offline communication setting, align position 12 D attractions. Now we set core centers and direct signals. We come into the pink. Pink is a heart reactor, line division location of center communication of Fibonacci. Directing signal lines of high position. Now we add a goal line, outline rotation, surface, and travel. Direct lines of position location, 3 lines measure, 4 line position of scale of communication lines of setting. Processing communication line signals, overline signals inside, rotation to its surface. Done my equation. All right. Coming inside track correlations of traffic and runways. Okay, and settings. Set communication high centers and swirls of communications. The simulation. Okay, waving screens, waving lines, routers, core centers, lines of travels, line position 3, 6, and 9. All through set and traction. Okay, setting line position location measure and a 4 lines of flux over screen location to its black hole. Black hole center lines its communication to its earth line and point lines of graph. Now the center core system, this work gets really interesting. We set 3 charge mechanism lines of power. 3 signals, and 4 communication in the constellation. Right? Directing lines, offline, position, location, 3 lines of measure, 2 lines of scale at all communication lines of surface. Sending high position location measure to its earth tone of its divots and location setting to its emitters. Sending process lines of angles. Process lines of 1, process lines of 2, ether lines, cores, ferments, directions into dimensional line rotation of sails and travel communication setting to high lines of surface. Set communication lines of grounds into the center core system of your eye triangle correlation system and setting. There's your eye. There's the set position of center operation of Fibonacci. There's your position of Earth and film strip corresponding locations into all levels of your projections over line communication setting to your light and your dark web and travel. All right, so the eye sets lines of travel, has direct lines of link. Now we change the 12-line signal location system. We add the gold tracks, set lines of center of operation lines of 3 measures, 3 scales in line communication setting of travel. Okay, eye division comes in, location to its system, all through outline signals inside through track communications. All right, so it has direct line lines, process and position location measure, Orange lines, high correlations Orion's belt, and 3 lines of measure and scale. Outlines 2 lines of orange in position of 4-track correlation setting and travel. The off position location comes into its pyramid and set position lines of communications. All right, directing lines of grounds says course centers line condition setting to a 45 split lines of anomaly, inside and outside rotation. All through a mapping sequence, all through Fibonacci, all through rounds of all communications, all lines are rounds and line position all levels, wormholes, stargates, portals out of 12-line settings into high position. This process is communication system all through travel. Center core system, line direct signals inside track communications. All right, inside position location to all levels of its simulation. All right, yeah, it's really cool through all line position. It's already set up, guys. See, you don't have to draw anything. It's already drawn. It's already in set position. It's all geometrics, right? This is a barometer. This is the thermometer change. It changes the equation lines of time, lines of sequence, lines of measure and scale. Setting coordinates, setting lines of flux, setting temperature readings, over lines of sequence of Fahrenheit, acceleration time sequence lines, position lines of panel, processing communication of 45 line communication of angles. Oh, look what we got here. What do you got? High positions of towers of communication. All right, so towers are coming in, line center location, long line center location to its system. Okay, red beacon light, right there in sequence. Okay, so we cross the angles, constellations coming in, line position on walls, cloak and dagger, 1 position, 2 positions, archetypes, and 3, over cross lines of 4 and travel. Okay, now directing line grounds, who over lines locations, a happy smile. All right, so we inline, outline, rotation, surface, and track. So we have the green line sequence inside position. 3 lines of measures and 3 calculations. Okay, 4 symbolism lines of 4 in settings. Locked in sequence, 1 line indication lines of travel. Inside rotation surface, in rotation to its eye and septical screen. That's the eye. Okay, so we go through the tentacle lines, the spectrum communication line centers. We set up the valves, rotation surface, and travel. Now the floaters come in, line signal locations and white line screens, cloak and daggers, lines of high centers, in overline rotation, in track correlation setting to its eye septic correlation system and travel. The lotus, the flower. The lotus flower comes to line signal location setting lines and measure and scale. The process of communication setting has a solar line lights into gold lines of change. Change direct signals of arrow indication lines of 1, 2, 3, and flux of 4 vertical line position. Flaw of recognition of time center. Now we change the diagonal line connections, high lines of service over cross location, inside, outside rotation service. There is the flower of recognition of time. Oh yeah. So we got 4 lines of correlation setting. We have position over 1, over screen, over adaptation, over surface and tractions. Now direct lines of grounds, inside rotations to X marks the spot. Processing communication system, all through tractions. Setting communication lines of direct signals and ground lines of surface and travel. Okay. So we go through the triangulation here, set position. And we go through the triangulation here in set position. Ground lines, highlighting signals to your pyramid, overline cross in lines of cloak and dagger. Downshift line, cross line, inline rotations, upline swing, correlation setting, cloak and dagger, set position lines of travel. Inline rotation inside, in travel, in point line communication system, all through calculations. All set up at center operation. Okay? It's amazing how you come into the Fibonacci set in sequence. All right, so it's traveling lines and line rotations to Earth, and off lines is communication lines, the ground lines, the surface of travel. That's my equation. Now the clocking system comes in. Now we change the clocking lines of grounds. We change the 24,000 line signals, position of 2,400,000 lines of ground lines of sequence. Clocking lines of 1 over cross lines of 2, cross lines of Pluto, position of Mercury, station in all 4 signals in line rotation system. 3 lines of measures of point dots, data ports, data positions, data calculation setting, ground lines of service. Triangulation of molecules of 3 designs, atom line rotation setting, flux over screen, directing lines of grounds, and line rotation surface and tractions, all 3 calculations. Okay? So it's pinpointing the graph lines, the Earth line rotation setting to your Fibonacci setting, the suppositions. But the communication of its flywheel is now set up in this Fibonacci sequence, right there in tractions, right in center operation, right there, see? That's where it is suppositions, all right? All right, so it's going to go through mechanism lines of space over time. Cloak and dagger over 1, cloak and dagger over 2, process lines of 3, process lines of 4, same direct signals, location setting of yin and yang. Okay? Setting line course centers, lines of arrows indicates a system of flux over screen, and 4 lines of signals that communicates setting all levels. You mark about tesseract in your tetrahedron. Okay? Setting course lines, setting flux over 3. Okay, so flux line of 1, flux lines of 2, flux lines of 4, and travel. Now, that indicates lines over cross locations of data files, directed signal lines of grounds over lines of sequence, and triangulation line position of its pyramid elements grounds, setting communicates lines of setting and line rotation surface as clocking system, direct and redirect and set position all levels and measure and scale. So that's communication online signals in rotation surface and tractions. That's my equation. It's all set up now, Fibonacci. So we got 12 lines of signals, the Earth line, point lines, graphs, and transits over divots, 45 angles, and travel communications. The webbing system. Box frame and travel communications, all through eyes, all through windows. All right, so set course centers. Then we set the high course centers to be planets. Setting lines of 1 signal, transits over 1, planets over 2. Now, Pluto's set up in 4 settings now. Okay, has to because it's protecting lines of 3 lines of 4. And your familiarity and course center location of your female and your male polarities in sequence. Setting lines of grounds, so we go into blue lines of surface. Now, blue lines across lines of inside line position inside. The inceptions over screen, minor adaptations over 4 over flux. Screen adaptation line, course centers. We have goal line screens, outline rotations, black holes surface, black holes centers, black hole travels, wormholes and travel communication setting, high lines of setting. Then we get in positional levels. We outline cross-line communication lines of measure and scale, outline signal, inside position, outline traction, and direct location to a system, all through a mapping segment. Segments over line, directing lines, high course centers, line positional levels of purple inside tractions, changing the opposite location setting directions inside and outside through travel that routes the routers of communication lines and calculations. That's my equation. Outline signals up through travel. There's the webbing system, location of Fibonacci. Hold down my equation. All right, it's all set up through your Earth. Right? So now we just set lines of course, blue, purple signals, and we start off with the webbing system lines of travel. Let's bring it in bold so you know exactly what I'm doing in set position. Set position 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 lines of sequence. Okay, it's already set up in line connection setting. Now, getting position of planet line settings, we route the routers again. We set course centers in your planet server location system that off the charge make the location of power of generation screens. So it communicates high lines of signals into online set line position your sky nets and sky grids correlation setting light webbing, directing your dark webbing lines of sequence location lines of pi. That position lines of high position level levels. Line position infinity cycle with 3 lines of 4 and 4 lines of measure and scale of communications. Directing inside, outline rotation inside the webbing system, all through travel and communication. Okay, setting communication high centers, setting communication high low location system, all through travel. Indirect signals of line calculation. Each point line graphs is center course system of the center of its intelligence. Face recognition, right there. See it? See the face? See the body? So, high charge mechanism lines, purple over screen, directing lines, online rotation, service, and travel, change the communication lines of timelines, measure and scale. The operates in cycles, change communication lines of timelines, of high position remote, the offline position locations of floaters and online communications comes into as propellers of space and time. Set of communication lines of grounds, overline cross location settings, symbolism location system, all through travel. Done by equation. All right. But that's how it's set up when your Earth, line, rotation, surface, and travel. All right, guys, off the Fibonacci. Okay. Thought I'd show you in color because that's how it is in communication to a system off through setting. How you set things up in real time, measure and scale, existing, evolving all at once. Right? It's happening right now, which is amazing. So happening right now is an equation of creating. So I'm getting you to understand everything that I do in drawing line mechanisms is going back in time, a structured design lines, but we're getting out of line communication of creation, all of us coming into the creating of its new cycle, that process communication setting all through its intelligence affirmation. Okay. So getting into that position location is body frame interactions, where the body goes in sequence lines coming into the lotus, into the flower direction of time lines, setting lines of high line rotation service, ground lines of symbolism, cross line positions, tree of life. Then we come into the webbing system, all branches and leaves comes into its tree itself interaction. Ooh-ah, booyah, the tree of life. The center core system is the center lines. So it's communication on high location system out through travel. Okay. Mapping sequence, coordinates, communication lines, computer framing, direct lines, align communication setting, high position location measure. Scales communication online center, online rotation surface interactions. Above the system, rotation system, all through traction. Okay. Inside position. All right. So we got a correlation lines of panel now. Now we have to go through triangulation flux over lines of box frames. Constellations already set up. Your Mercury is all set up. Station line position Jupiter, line position of Moon, all positional location of Pluto. It's all set up in line position of sectors, vectors, and quads. But I just wanted to show you how you set things up in your Earth line position location measure in track correlation system all through Fibonacci, all set interactions. All right, all through in set line rotations and its mapping sequence. It's interactions. Okay. Okay, so there's a difference to understand that in line communicates to a system off through the eye center. How you set things up in traction, right? It's all done through line settings. So eye division, let's get interaction centers. Formula communication lines of 3 lines. Eye central setting location to a system. Here's the eye. The eye center course this way and travel now in direction. Okay? But you're seeing the window frames in this line communications. This way interactions now. The opposite direct locations. Seeing the picture frames and travel. Okay, seeing the picture frames and travel. Seeing the picture frames and travel, guys. In the opposite direct location of system off the calculations. All right, see the eye division goes here, the eye division goes here, eye division goes here, eye division goes here, and travel. Okay, so it's setting into the data, processes communication lines of towers of its satellite interaction. Your eye's looking up now. Okay, your eye's looking in position of panel. Your eye is looking on the other side rotation settings of panel. And the eye line sequence is looking down through its equation. Okay, there's your Earth looking this way. Okay, that's your Earth line, ground line communications, right? That's your eye looking down, right? That's your eye looking the Earth this way. That's your eye looking up. That's Earth. That's your eye looking the other side lines in the panel in that way, set positions. Now, understanding the position of core is the ether line. It has an interline communication lines with a filter that basically is crevice lines of core, solid core, metal core, line liquidation core, and line communication cataracts. Sets the core centers lines of travel and direct lines of link. The process communicates to its system all through calculations. The eye central setting. Okay, all through interactions. Earth line, tone line communicates in your satellite. Direct lines of panels and process communication setting lines of travel and direct lines of communications all through floaters. Right? So we set up DNA interactions, offline communications, data files, lines of 3 lines of measure and scale. Process and files of communication how the eye sees all levels of spectrum and direct lines and set position locations measure and communication setting in remote. The eye central system offlines this communication system off through travel and travel communications. That's the eye central looking at all 4 line signals. So setting lines of north, east, west, and south, sets position location to a pyramid through pi and travel. Okay, inline rotation inside through track correlation system. In the inside rotation setting of the track communication to its eye itself in set position. The traffic of the runway. All line connection setting in your Fibonacci screen adaptation. Okay, it's very powerful how you see the center core system of your eye now, or through projection. I know it's complicated stuff, but it's a lot of fun when you see it on the earth line. See, your eye looking up at the earth. Okay, your eye looking the sideline. Your eye looking down at the earth. And your eye looking up at the earth. All right, guys, that's where you're coming into now. Crevice over screen has the flux lines of a black hole. Black hole lines a server location system. The eye central setting change direct signals that ground lines the servers and crop circle location system. Okay, setting communication on the high centers offline is communication system to its ether, firmaments, and a coarse location to its umbrella. Direct lines at grounds, outline centers, line positional measure, 3 scales into pyramid screen adaptation. Remember, this is all done since that position, right? How you see all formation settings on all position of your film into application to your earth and all through projection, right? All through your images, interactions, okay? Very powerful through the eye-line sequence, okay? Process lines of data, files lines of one sequence, lines of window, set 3 lines of signal location settings to measure and scale. Process indicate high center location over cross locations of data files. Setting lines, interception core system, lines of travel, files coming in, indirect lines of the eye-line sequence, and 4 lines of measure and scale communications. All right, all through the eye central system, all through the grounds, okay, or lines of the eye looking down at the earth line rotation, all through files and communications. All right. So I just want to show you how powerful it is to see inside the eye central system. How the eye is actually set up, guys, and its oculars and screen. Okay, all what you see in seconds, minutes, and hours, and remote in real time, existing and evolving all at once through its data platforms. Files of recognition time centers, guys. Open line signal location setting to the earth line in position of space. So your earth is at space now. Blue lines of sequence, circulation rotation line, connection setting. Now it is a circular sphere, okay, because it's connected to your eye, so you have no more problems. Is the earth flat? Or is the earth round? Well, just look at your eye. Now you're looking at your earth, right? No more confusion, right? So now you know what your earth is. It's like line, core center location, solar sphere. Direct lines, high core centers to flywheel, line core center lines of travel. Its position of a lotus flower in the eye lines to the cataracts. Change the eye line rotation to its set position lines of travel. That sets all communication system, all calculation modify. Directing lines, say communication lines of high centers. Okay, earth point lines of graph and communication setting coming to earth. Then come into the ground lines of sequence in set positions. So you don't get confused anymore what your earth really is, because you're looking through the eyes, you're looking at your earth inside your eye line. There's your earth from above, there's your eye from below. But it's all sequence all at once in set position. How it sees things in interactions in seconds, minutes, and hours. Okay? So get in that position location in cycle. Look at that. Look at your eye. Look in here. Look at all the film strips, which are seen through projection. The projective of the projection is the eye line setting. So you don't get confused in what you're looking through the eye line, because it is a spherical sphere. It's a solar sphere. Okay? It's a computer sphere. Now we all have to understand how to use that, of course, centers through the eyes itself. Understand the eyes, the windows of the soul. Now, the soul identifies the film strip. The position of the body identifies the correlation setting in its position location to its programmer, directing to its programming. High center location to its inner line, outer line, out A line circuit. It's the core center location of travel, indirect lines and lines, and high lines of sequence and set tractions. How you see everything in your earth in a 4-line signal, all at once. All right, so in that rotations, you come into this lines, where the body comes in sequence lines in position location measure into the location of the lotus, and position all levels of high core center location of travel, directing line position location all levels of flower and time centers into its connections of its life force, that position location of its tree of life. That's next in the equation. All right, so everybody's symbolism line tractions. Now the uppers and the units, they basically start off at page 1. Page 1 is an indication system all through travel. Now, the first schematics that you have, now you're following humanity, they map and sequence lines and pi. This is motivation screen, directing lines in their film strips, know exactly what they're doing in a remote. Existing line communication all at once, evolving to all lines of high set location of a system, all through travel. Inner circuit, outer circuit, audio settings. This process is communication system all through travel that puts everybody in position, location, and bounce of what they're seeing in position lines inside and outside and inside the locations of the eye line rotations of surface interactions. Okay? And that's what it is in set positions, guys. All through the eye set position. There's your eye looking at everything through its earth. Right? Very powerful stuff. How it sees in all 4 line sequence all at once. Right? Now when it sees 4 lines of signals, so your mid position location lines and high centers travels the point lines of graph. Let's get in sequence. Let's get way above system. Earth 1, Earth 2, Earth 3. Okay, sending track center location your systems, right? Above the system, right? Which is here interaction, right? So you got your flux, okay? And you got your flux down. You look at your actual setting of your nose. So your nose is here in travel, right? Sending communications. That's your nose lines. Sending course centers. There's your ear. There's your ear. Okay, set positions, right? Processing communication setting. Flux over line, directing lines. It's high center location of system all through travel. Directing communication system all through settings and travel communications, right? Then you get it position of the high centers. Then you come into all position of its neck in travel communications. Then you get in position lines of high set course system line connection setting to its body framing. Body frame comes in position of right over left. Here, down flux. Here, left signal down. That's the flux capacitor. So that's communication lines. Triangulation settings. All positions, all for line conditions, all allowing for women. Women are lines of triangulation. Men are box and set position to its frame and communications. That's how it's set up through all levels of female and male polarity and set lines of sequence of triangulation box and flux over screen. Earth line connection setting of Earth, set position of space, Earth tone line high centers of echo sonar, line conditions of Hall settings, echo Zuller, setting lines of Foxtrot communications. Phase direction of time centers, sets course system, and 3 lines of communication setting, all through your pyramids in line position, astro travels, astro connections, and set tractions. Pyramid and set line rotations. Then you get in position of the box frame. Box frame course centers, the eye line centers, 3 lines of sequence, 3 lines of 4, and position of its window frame interactions. Eye division lines, eye looking out, eye looking in at the same time and measure. Scales communication lines into its location grid and set position lines of travel. Direct line outline signal inside rotation system all through calculation system. Travel point lines graph, inline rotation line calculation set. There's the third line correlations inside tractions. There it is in position. How the eye sees everything in traction. So the central system line condition setting, you're seeing your Earth on this angle, you're seeing your Earth on this angle, you're seeing your Earth on this angle, and you're seeing your Earth on this angle above the system. Okay? Very complicated stuff, but you got to try to understand the eye lines of here, the eye lines of left, the eye lines of right, and the eye lines of surface interactions of center operation. It's a lot of connection system all levels of its window frame. But the center core system is its all-spark inside the eye itself in travel. Okay, then it comes in eye line settings into the X2000s. Now you're at the 144 platform coming out through division. Setting lines of travels, indirect lines of line signals. Okay, very powerful in the sequence, guys. How it comes in line position, location, measure, and scale of travel communications. Okay, all right, but that's the center of the eye. This is the center of your Earth and center operation sequence. Okay, eye within the eye within the eye in 3 cycles. 3 cycles into 1, 4 cycles into 1, 5 cycles into 1, 7,000 cycles into eye setting in 1 cycle. So it's all about understanding mass, understanding all levels of the equation. All set position location to a system all through travel. Now once you understand that direct signals, then the actual eye turns into its Earth. Comes into lines of habitation to its inhabitation zone. 6 over line, 6 over pi, sets lines of 12 lines of measure, comes out communication settings. So your Earth forms inside the eye of the spectrum line of communications. All right, get in line position of blue, which is your bodies of water, plasma lines, direct lines of 7 over attractions, direct signal locations. Then you come into the brown. Brown is position lines of Earth line, tone line, crop circles. Setting communication system. There's your Earth in the eye setting. Booyah, the Earth itself. So once the Earth understands its rotation system, comes all levels of imagination setting. The process line direct signals, the eye goes in line communication wherever it wants to go, by itself, in mind of inception to its imagination system. Okay? But you start with the eye itself. Okay? You start with the eye itself. All right? So Earth lines of 1, habitations of 6, and inhabitations, so it's another 6 in travel. Puts position line high center rotation 12 DNAs in travel. Okay? All right, that's it through equation. Woo! See you guys in 5.